Good morning, everybody. Let me offer a very warm welcome to all of you to this historic space in Liechtenstein. You're surrounded by some of the most important figures in the history of Liechtenstein. And I want to point out our head of state, who is holding in his hand the Charter of the United Nations, because he was key in orchestrating and initiating the membership of Liechtenstein in the United Nations in the year 1990, which of course has a close link to what we're discussing today, because the topic of our conversation fast is something that was born, in fact, in New York in partnership between United Nations University and our mission. I'm the ambassador of Liechtenstein to the United Nations, Christian Venaweser, and it's really wonderful for me to see you all here. I want to thank everybody for making the trip here. We are here to discuss FAST, Finance Against Slavery and Trafficking, which is for us our key project in the international project in the area of sustainable development and on the 2030 agenda. And it is one of its aspects of particular importance for us is that it is a public-private partnership, the first of this kind in Liechtenstein, and it's a particular pleasure for me to welcome our partners from the private sector. The IRC, as we have called it, the Implementation Review Conference for which we are gathering here, is in a way a long time coming. We have been wanting to do this earlier in time, which of course was not possible in particular due to the pandemic. And we're all the more pleased to have so many of you here now in person. Others will be joining us virtually, but it's really great to have you all here, because we all know that the opportunities that we have on the margins to have conversations are just as important as the gathering itself. It's of course a little bit also full circle for some of us, because the body that led to that produced the blueprint that is FAST, that is Finance Against Slavery and Trafficking, the Financial Sector Commission, had one of its first gatherings here in Liechtenstein, and of course some of the persons that have served on the commission are here, Henny, and of course Daniel, who has since taken over FAST, which is for us really a particular pleasure, and it's great to see you here, Daniel, on the podium. So with these few opening remarks, I want to wish everybody a really successful conference. We look forward to conversations both about what we have achieved, but also where we want to take this. We are very proud, I have to say, of this initiative, and very pleased with what we have been able to achieve so far. But we also do believe that it has a great potential for the future, and we look forward to exploring this potential with all of you here. And now it is my pleasure and my honor to introduce our Foreign Minister, Dominique Hasler, who will be offering opening remarks, and it's really great that he joined us this morning. Thank you so much for being here.
Ladies and gentlemen, here in Vaduz and all over the world in a virtual manner, it is a great pleasure to welcome you at the Implementation Review Conference for the Liechtenstein Initiative on Finance Against Slavery and Trafficking, FAST for short. My deep appreciation goes out in particular to the team at the FAST Secretariat, led by Mr. Daniel Telesclav, for organizing this important meeting. It's great to see you back in Liechtenstein, Daniel. I'm very happy that you were able to come to Liechtenstein for what I am sure will be productive discussions. Ladies and gentlemen, human trafficking and modern slavery are among the most grave human rights challenges of our time. They are global, affecting all regions of the world. They thrive in conditions conducive to vulnerability, which are being exacerbated by the COVID-19 pandemic. They are the most extreme expressions of economic and social inequality. And they disproportionately affect women and girls. The international community agreed long ago on the universal abolition of slavery in all its forms. And yet, to this day, we continue to see shocking levels of modern slavery and human trafficking around the world. This is simply unacceptable. This is why combating human trafficking and modern slavery is one of Liechtenstein's priorities, a priority that is firmly rooted within our long-standing commitment to strengthen and protect human rights and the rule of law. FAST is one of our international flagship SDG projects, developed with support from our private sector and philanthropic partners, the Liechtenstein Bankers Association, the LGT Bank, the Hilti Family Foundation, Medicor Foundation, and the Taram Foundation. The COVID-19 pandemic is indeed a call on all of our societies to do our part to build back better. Also, by redoubling our efforts to end trafficking and modern slavery. Part of this should include an effective effort to leverage the crucial role played by the financial sector in ending these exploitative practices. We are not only looking at an outrageous assault on human dignity, but also at disturbingly profitable forms of organized crime, generating tens of billions of US dollars in revenue each year. Our approach to fighting such crimes has often been to follow the money. That can not only lead us to the perpetrators, but also deny themselves the resources they need to commit these crimes in the first place. We must track down the financial flows created by modern slavery and human trafficking. Our own domestic financial intelligence unit provides a good example of high standards and expertise in the area of compliance. But this is not only just a compliance discussion. Focusing on other areas can be a game changer. Creating greater financial inclusion is critical. And responsible lending and investment can have a huge impact. Sustainable finance in particular, meaning increased attention to environmental, social and governance or ESG factors, can create new pathways from investment that support this effort. This initiative will also help us put the necessary emphasis on the S in ESG, without taking anything away from the other elements of ESG to which Liechtenstein is fully committed. It was the interest and expertise of Liechtenstein's financial center and philanthropic sector that led to the launch of the initiative which resulted in FAST, and our wish to put this expertise to a constructive use at the international level. And we are thrilled that Australia, the Netherlands, and most recently the Norwegian Agency for Development Cooperation have joined as partners of FAST. We hope that others will join us. It is our sincere hope that FAST is helping to change the way the financial sector engages with these issues in order to make a real difference in the fight against modern slavery and human trafficking globally. We are gathering here in Liechtenstein, so hear what this novel public-private partnership initiative has achieved so far, but also to look to the future together and discuss where we can take our common project in the years to come. Ladies and gentlemen, eradicating modern slavery and human trafficking is an enormous challenge, and it can seem daunting indeed. There is no doubt that FAST is just one initiative in the global effort to reach this goal. But we are convinced that it is an indispensable part. And we are greatly encouraged by how far we have already come. Thank you all for the important contributions you all have made, individually and collectively, to the fight against modern slavery and human trafficking. A big thanks again to the FAST Secretariat for its leadership in steering the initiative forward. I very much look forward to your discussion, and I wish you and the conference the best of success. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much for Minister Hasler. And we will now be listening to a number of opening statements that will frame our discussion today. So we will move into the specifics and the panel discussions thereafter. And our first speaker is Daniel Telesklav, the head of FAST. Daniel was, as I mentioned, one of the commissioners on the Financial Sector Commission, and of course he's very, very well known here in Liechtenstein as the head of the Financial Intelligence Unit. Great to have you. Daniel, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Christian. Frau Regierungsrätin, Minister Hasler, Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, dear colleagues, dear friends, it's wonderful to be back. Not only to be back in Liechtenstein, but also to be back in a real room. It was about time to leave the house of Zoom, WebEx, Teams, and others. And yet some of us, and I particularly welcome them too here, are still in the house of Zoom and are joining us remotely. So we benefit and continue to benefit from this technology. But I'm actually very glad that we are here also in person and benefit from your presence, not only during the meetings, but also in between meetings in the evenings. And I will tell you in a second why we have also high expectation on your presence here. But first of all, I would like to thank you very warmly for making the way here. Some of you have arrived at 11 p.m. at the airport in Zurich, so I hope you got some sleep in between here. For many of us, it's a relatively old new experience to travel again, so we particularly appreciate that because we know that it's not the easiest time for traveling. Let me also join in the Minister and thank our donors, Nora, the governments of the Netherlands and Australia, private sector donors from Liechtenstein philanthropic organizations, and last and certainly not least, the government of Liechtenstein, who has been our initial donor of the initiative. And that was a courageous step, and I hope you see benefit, and I was glad to hear from you that you see benefit in having done that. And I think we will continue to honor this early engagement by having our, proudly wearing our second name, which is the Liechtenstein Initiative. Of course, our activities are not limited to Liechtenstein. We have a global plan to discuss with you. But as it is for the Paris Accord on climate change, of course, it doesn't deal with the climate in Paris only. But we will continue proudly having and bearing this name. The character of the meeting is a mixed bag of panel discussions, presentations. We have some pre-recorded statements of people that where it is 2 o'clock in the morning and couldn't join us live. But my expectation, my hope for the panel, for the conference would be to have two things, actually achieve two things. One is to reflect on what we have achieved until now in the last 3 years. This was the early character of the meeting. That's why it's called review conference. We didn't know at the time when we was planning it whether we would continue as an initiative. And luckily, and thanks to our donors, we are able to continue. But looking back in a way of learning something from looking back, not to be self-congratulatory and saying that we were great, but also identifying where we have not yet achieved our goals or where we need to do more. And the other element is really to look forward. Our work plan is set, but we still have a lot of flexibility where we would allocate resources and where we would have really be focusing on in the next 1 or 2 years. And for that reason, I really encourage you to speak openly, frankly, bluntly, also to say where we are not good at. because it's those areas where we have to focus our work for. We have deliberately not made this a public conference. So while we have some participants joining us remotely, they're all part of the family, have contributed to FAST activities or are partners in our activities. Yes, the sessions will be recorded, and we may turn some of the statements made into video clips and we'll use them, but in any event, we will always ask you before we would go public with anything you say here. So this is an environment where we can talk openly, and I really, really encourage you to do so. After each panel, we will have ample time for questions and answers. The only thing is we'll require a microphone, so for people here in the room, before you can speak, we will give you a microphone so that our participants and friends joining us remotely can also hear your comment or your question. For people joining us remotely, please use the Q&A functionality in Zoom. We will monitor the incoming questions or comments, and then Janina will post them to us as if you were here. We will have at the end of the conference a final panel where we look forward, where we really try to identify activities that have already started or are about to start soon. And the other 4 panels we have are very much structured along the blueprint. So we'll see goal 1, for example. The first panel will be on goal 1, and that's a reference to the blueprint and the work we have been doing in the first year of the existence of the initiative, and you have a copy of the blueprint in front of you. So let me just add a few housekeeping points, and there will be more when we go through the conference. You have seen there's coffee served here. We don't have in the morning an official coffee break, but whenever you have a need for caffeine, just leave the room, get your coffee, and come back. And there's even more than coffee, I saw. Lunch will also be served here. It will be a buffet lunch, so ample opportunity for you to interact with your colleagues. I already mentioned the microphone, so whenever you speak, we need a microphone. And last but not least, and I hope the day will come where we don't have to make a reference to the COVID protocol, but we are not there yet. So you should all have received a green bracelet, which means that all of you are either vaccinated, fully vaccinated, or tested, or have recovered from COVID. So we should have a safe environment here. But still, as we know, we need to continue to be cautious. So whenever possible, try to keep distance. That explains that we have a more distant seating here. But we have done everything to provide a safe environment. So, but in case B, if somebody feels unease and if it the slightest symptoms, please let us know. We have kits here, self-testing kits. So in any event, when anyone feels uncertain, just come to us. 15 minutes later, you have got additional level of comfort. So don't hesitate to ask us. We will take care of that situation. So I think that's it from my side for the moment. Christian, back to you.
Great, thank you. Thank you so much, Daniel. And now it is my pleasure to give the floor to our next panelist. She is from a country that has been at the forefront in advocacy on the abolition of modern slavery. And so with this, I'm happy to give the floor to you, Dame Sarah Thornton. She's the UK Independent Anti-Slavery Commissioner. Thank you so much for joining us here in Liechtenstein.
Thank you very much indeed, Your Excellencies, friends and colleagues, both in this room and online. Good morning to you. First of all, can I say thank you for inviting me to speak at this important conference. I've admired the work of FAST. It's great to be involved and great to be invited to join your advisory board. When I became the UK Independent Anti-Slavery Commissioner in 2019, people were talking about the Liechtenstein initiative, but I wasn't really sure what it was all about. And until I did some work on a call to action for financial services with a couple of small UK businesses, Themis and Tribe. And it was at that point that I fell across the blueprint and was struck by the compelling argument. The world's bankers, investors, insurers, and financial partners have unparalleled influence over global business, and that finance is a lever by which the whole global economy can be moved. and the kind of the logic and the simplicity of that really struck me, because as Commissioner, my role is set out in statute, and amongst other things, I have a responsibility to encourage good practice in preventing modern slavery. And so I was keen to understand more of your work and to support it where I could. And so in April, we jointly hosted a conference with Ambassador Venevasa in the City of London for financial institutions. And since then, I've found both James Cockayne and now Daniel great allies in anti-slavery work, and look forward to working with you more in the future. We know that every sizable supply chain is at risk of forced labour and exploitation at some level, whether it's mining, agriculture or fishing, or in the middle tiers of processing and smelting, or above that in manufacturing, construction, or outsourced services such as cleaning. We also know that businesses that turn a blind eye to modern slavery and human trafficking can have lower labour costs, can compete unfairly, and are therefore able, importantly in this context, to access capital unfairly. We need to use our influential position to address this. We in this room and online are people of power and influence, and we need to speak up for and protect the most vulnerable and marginalised workers across the world. In January this year, working with the Emerson Tribe, I published a report, Preventing Modern Slavery and Human Trafficking, an agenda for action across the financial services sector. And having published the report, I decided that I would send it to 51 chief executive officers of leading financial services companies and ask them to reassure themselves that they and their companies were taking concrete steps to address the findings in the report. And I'm very pleased that actually out of the 51, 44 replied. And their responses were often detailed, describing initiatives, leadership commitment, all manner of collaborative working. But having read them and stepped back and thought about what the situation really was, I wasn't persuaded that the financial services sector had really integrated modern slavery risks in all their business processes. I would argue that social issues such as modern slavery are financially material to a business, but that approach didn't seem to be reflected in the core risk identification and management processes. Discussing this kind of thought I had with an expert in the field, he suggested to me that the information provided, whether open source, from NGOs, from law enforcement, is just not in a form that can be ingested and analysed by financial institutions. If he's right, what can we do about it? You mentioned, Foreign Minister, the issue about climate and ESG. Focus on the climate has clearly led to a much broader focus on environmental issues. But they're sometimes seen as being in competition with social issues such as modern slavery. But in fact, the evidence tells us that the more you do on E, the more you need to think about S. Environmental and social issues often have the same causes. For example, deforestation and the issues of indigenous people's land rights, livelihoods, and consequent migration. E and S are not in competition, and I think when everybody's talking about COP26, that's a really important thing to bear in mind. Over the last 20 years, we have developed consistent approaches to measuring our carbon footprint, but it has taken over 20 years. Would it ever be possible to have a quantitative measure of social impact, including modern slavery? Is that something we need to be thinking about? And while we're talking about measurement, could we start maybe by agreeing on international standards? The more I look at the 11 ILO indicators, the International Labour Organization indicators of forced labour, I think that might be a good place to start. Abuse of vulnerability, deception, restriction of movement, isolation, physical and sexual violence, intimidation and threats, withholding of wages, debt bondage, excessive overtime, abusive working and living conditions. Might that be a good place to start as we think over the next few days? So picking up on Daniel's point, I know that this conference was originally envisaged as a sort of end-of-project reflection, but I'm delighted there's now more funding to pursue our goals. We have got some of the world's experts in this room and in the Zoom room. What a fantastic opportunity to share ideas and wisdom to help us to develop the next stage in our journey. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Dame Sarah, in particular also for talking about the correlation between the E and the S, something that we have made very much a priority in our work in New York, and I think it's going to be extremely important in moving forward on these agendas. A very important feature of the FSC, the work of the Financial Sector Commission, and of FAST is its strong emphasis on the role of survivors. And it's a great pleasure for me to welcome a survivor with us here, Timea, who has been also a member. Hi Timea, good to see you. She was also a member of the Financial Sector Commission, has been with us here in Liechtenstein before, and we would love for you to be here today, but it's wonderful that you're joining us online. So Timea Naji-Payne is the head of Timea's cause and former member of the Financial Sector Commission. Good to have you, Timea. The floor is yours.
Good morning. Good morning, distinguished guests. Good morning, everyone. Unfortunately, I couldn't be there in person, but that didn't stop my excitement to say yes when I was invited to be a part of this beautiful opening morning. It is such an honor to be here with you through the Zoom. I would like to just say really a few words. When I was asked to join FAST 2 years ago, I actually didn't really know what I was asked to be a part of. I've been a speaker and an advocate for a very long time, but I was just starting to being a part of conversations about modern day slavery in a financial sector. So I have to say I was extremely nervous because I wasn't sure what could I possibly bring to the table. I didn't fully understand the sector. I didn't fully understand their responsibilities to society. But most importantly, I just never met any individuals who were specifically working in that sector. So I was very hesitant actually, and I was very nervous. And it was a little bit of a culture shock, even to kind of meet or join these kind of gatherings. And the very first evening when we met in New York, I never forget, the first friendly face who came up to me and welcomed me was actually Daniel, and tried to put me at ease. I don't know if he could tell that I was very nervous. It wasn't until the second meeting, I believe, when I was actually able to get as comfortable to say and realize why on earth I could possibly be here and contribute. And when I realized what could I possibly contribute, I realized that there is a saying, that the advocates like myself, a survivor, is bringing the voice to the voiceless, or to the rooms where the other 40.5 million survivors can be there to speak for themselves. And that's when I realized the enormous responsibility that I have to be able to potentially properly and appropriately represent the survivors from around the world. And not only that, but to also be able to bring a level of knowledge from our perspective to passionate, dedicated, motivated, inspired individuals who are working in a financial sector such as yourself. It took me a long time, actually, almost 7 years, to fully comprehend as a survival advocate the important role that the financial sector has to end modern day slavery. And I will be happy to kind of share those thoughts and realizations at the later conversation. But that being said, I was truly honored to be a part of the first 2 years of FAST initiative, because that's when we had the chance to colleagues, I believe, and I was able to learn more about every single task force member's narratives and why they decided to come to this table and lend their expertise. That being said, I learned in the last 2 years how much sacrifices some of you actually have to do to be able to do this kind of a work. I understand that not everybody's company or everybody's sector is as supportive yet. I understand that some of you may be the only cheerleaders in your company or corporation or sector to bring these very important conversations to your management and higher level or to your leaders in your country. And so very quickly I realized that the fight within the financial sector to end modern day slavery, it really isn't that different than what we had to go through with the law enforcement sectors or some of the public sectors. And that's when I slowly started to realize that maybe this isn't as intimidating as I thought it would be first. And that's when I realized how important your role is to play when we really truly trying to end such a crime that is changing lives, taking lives, and changing our children's future. I was a victim of human trafficking 22 years ago. And I can just say this, if I knew back then how many people will come along to fight this crime or how many people actually cared about us while we were in it, it would have actually made it so much easier for me to recover. So I would like to thank you, each and every one of you, from the bottom of my heart on behalf of all the survivors who cannot be here today and cannot thank you yet because they are simply not free yet. Like, as lucky as I am, I can be here and speak these words. So thank you very much for all of your sacrifices. Thank you for your motivation, inspiration, and thank you for trying to be a part of this conversation. And I also would like to say a heartfelt thank you to our very new leader, Danielle. I really appreciate the way you would like to take this to the next level. And I hope that we can support you any way we can. Thank you all so much. And I wish you a wonderful next few days and conversations.
Thank you so much, Timea. You have been an extremely important and articulate voice in our common cause. Of course, the Survivor Inclusion Initiative is one of the flagship projects and achievements of FAST, and we very much look forward to continuing working with you, and it's wonderful to see you. Thank you so much for joining us. So this brings to the end our